Sorry, let me refresh us all on the topic of this live stream. So this is a continuation of my pendulum series, how to navigate modern pendulums and make them work for you as a sovereign woman or as a single woman. Obviously, you can listen to this as well if you're partnered up, but my content is like more specifically geared towards single women that are still trying to just navigate this phase of their life. So pendulums, just to recap, they are a concept that was introduced to us by Vadim Zeland in his book, Reality Transurfing. This is an amazing kind of framework for manifestation and basically how to like bring about your desired reality. And it's a really, he explains like abstract concepts using really detailed models and frameworks that I think they can help you depending on what kind of learner you are. If you're like a visual learner, if you need something tangible or physical to grasp onto, the way that he puts it in this book can be really helpful to you. So anyway, pendulums, just to recap really quickly, it's any type of group or entity or organization that has a certain agenda that they are trying to push, that they need to recruit more people into. They need to harvest your energy or your money or all of the above in order to keep their group or their own entity going. So common pendulums are certain companies, right? If you work for a certain company, then you are feeding into that pendulum every single day because you are giving them your labor and your life force and whatever. And, there's an entire spectrum it ranges from super toxic to super beneficial, but at best, it's always going to be a symbiotic relationship, right? Anytime you enter into a relationship with a pendulum, whether it's a company or interest group, even like a hobby group that you might be part of, a chessboard game group that meets on Saturdays, that constitutes one type of pendulum. And, depending on the goals of the pendulum or who is at the helm, who is on the board of directors of that pendulum, who's on the leadership team, that's going to dictate what they're looking for from you. So you just have to be conscious when you're in the world, and you also onto yourself. You are a pendulum. YouTube channels, this YouTube channel is a pendulum. Certain topics are pendulums, like case in point, the whole Wizard Liz and Landon situation. It's a thing that if you keep feeding it, like people do have a vested interest. Certain people have a interest in keeping this discussion, the updates of Liz and Landon, alive on social media because it brings attention to their channels, which in turn brings profit to them, right? Whether in the form of real cold hard cash like AdSense money or just attention and clout for their channel, people have a vested interest in keeping certain topics trending. And that's why, rage bait is also very effective because it plays on the most low vibrational of human emotions like fear, shame, etc., or like the desire to see other people be humiliated in public. So any entity that kind of like seeks energy, essentially harvests energy from people, from society, is a pendulum. So you yourself, you and your life, remember, is also a pendulum, right? That's the one that you have the most interest in preserving and in feeding. So in order to do so, you have to be careful whatever pendulums that you interact with in the world, which nobody is exempt from. We all have to do it to some extent. And we all have to, unfortunately, we all have to encounter and deal with toxic pendulums sometimes. But as long as you are equipped with the tools and the mental fortitude and the strategy to navigate some of the more treacherous pendulums out there, you should be fine. This is why it's important to develop your own intuition. And the way that you develop your own intuition first is to figure out and assert in the beginning, okay, what your goal is, what you want for yourself, what would be in your best interest. So that's step one. Actually, there's a step 0 before that, which is to give yourself permission to voice out loud even what is best for yourself without the influence of the shame programming or the guilt programming that a lot of us have been programmed with or indoctrinated with since we were a child. So after you undo, all of your shame programming and your good girl programming, when you are in the space to finally put yourself first, realize that, okay, this is my life and I have the right to, design it the way that I feel fit. I have the right to pursue a a certain standard of living or a certain job, whatever it is that benefits me and that works for me, right? I reserve the right to try out different groups or try out different jobs. But if I ever feel that I'm being disrespected or if I'm not being valued in a certain space, I reserve the right to withdraw my presence and go find another situation or another group that actually values me and cherishes me. So once you know that, then your intuition is just a natural next step, because now anything that you interact with that is acting like out of alignment with that, you're going to be able to feel it immediately when a certain pendulum that you interact with is trying to get you to go against your own best interests or sacrifice yourself for the greater good of that particular group or pendulum, right? So I always like to go back to just this simple diagram. It's just a Venn diagram. So you want to make sure that when you're interacting with pendulums, you want to make sure that you hit a sweet spot. It's a better bet to give your energy and your attention to pendulums and situations and relationships in which there's a mutual benefit for both you and the organization or the group. So a lot of times, like what I talk about on this channel is to protect yourself from predatory or like energy vampire type of pendulums that just come to take from you. And their main goal is to just suck away your life essence without giving you anything in return of value. In fact, they might give you something even worse, like trauma or something in return in the worst case scenarios. But the flip side of that a lot of people don't talk about is that you also don't necessarily want to be in a situation where you are, for lack of a better term, kind of like the predatory entity, or you're the one that's like benefiting at the expense of someone else. Okay, so that's an important part. I'm not talking about like, if you're receiving certain benefits from the government because of whatever situation that you happen to be in. Like, let's say you're a widow or something and you receive dividends from your husband's estate. I don't know how it works legally, but that would not be harming anyone, right? Because that's like money that is allotted to you and it's your legal right to claim that. But I'm talking about situations where like you are benefiting from something, or you are living the soft life, you're getting what you want at the expense of someone else, usually an individual or maybe another woman. If you are directly causing the suffering of another person or another woman that doesn't deserve it, who is innocent, then you wouldn't feel good about that, right? In your heart, if you knew that that was the reason why you were receiving your benefits. So it's best to, try to think of a example. I can't think of many. Well, it's kind of like, okay, so this is not the exact scenario I was thinking about, but let's say that you have a good friend that like has always been loyal to you and always been there for you in your time of need, and maybe they are being questioned by the law for something they did that was in a gray area. Like, let's say they were dealing drugs or something on the side, but it has nothing to do with you. However, maybe the prosecutor or the investigator turns up to your house and starts to like interrogate you and tries to ask you questions about your friend so that you can implicate your friend. Like, maybe in that scenario, you stay silent, right? Or you say that, okay, I'm not authorized, or I'm not going to give any statement, so you can talk to my lawyer instead. And so in that sense, like, I'm not saying that it's not your responsibility at the end of the day to protect anyone else for consequences of their own actions, of course. But I'm just saying, like, if you can get out of making a statement that directly implicates your friend, let's say that they offer you like a ton of money to rat on your friend, essentially, and you're not involved in this operation at all. Okay, this is some trouble that your friend got in by herself. But the thing is that as far as your relationship with her goes, maybe like she's never done anything wrong towards you and you guys have never betrayed each other or anything like that. So in that scenario, like, you wouldn't want to sell out your friend just to get some short-term payout, right? So if you have the choice to do so without also getting embroiled in the case, maybe you just decide to stay silent, or you get a lawyer, you get legal counsel that tells you what to do in order to not get involved in the case, and therefore like not make things harder for your friend than they already are, if that makes sense. So that would be a way of like rejecting a scenario where you are benefiting directly at the expense of someone else. I don't know if it was the best example, but that's all I could come up with on the spot. Yeah, try to look for scenarios or pendulums that you can engage with in which you have this overlap. It's like I scratch their back and they can scratch my back. I call this the sweet spot, right? And then sometimes you will have offshoots of this type of situation. For example, if you, like me, if you find a side gig that happens to pay you, but then you're also providing some labor for them in exchange, but it happens to be in an industry that's outside of like your main job that you're also interested in. So you're gaining knowledge about that industry. Like in my case, I'm kind of interested in real estate, but I'm definitely not at the point where I think that, okay, I want to pivot my career or anything like that. But I'm interested. I want to learn about the state of affairs, and I'm especially interested in the pool of buyers here in Japan that would be actually like the ones that physically buy real estate in Dubai, right? So sometimes there will be offshoots of the sweet spot situations that you can also opt to engage in as well. But you also, every time that an offshoot opportunity presents itself to you, you have to make a different assessment on whether or not it's worth your time, right? So let's say, for example, offshoot number one could be like an after party to a certain event that you attended, and maybe there is a particular individual of interest, like a CEO or just whatever, someone in your network that you've been looking to talk to, or you've been looking for the opportunity for a one-on-one chance to have a conversation with them about a certain topic. If they are going to go to the after party, maybe you decide to tag along as well. And that's going to be it's going to be an additional way for you to gain even more value out of the situation. But then sometimes the offshoots are not valuable at all. And in those cases, you should probably decline. For example, in the Dubai real estate seminar, some of the people, I don't know if they actually went, but they were talking about, because it was on Friday, I think. I remember these are Japanese real estate agents that live and work in Dubai, and they travel here periodically for those real estate seminars. So they also, like every time they're in Tokyo, I imagine they want to make the most out of what they can get in terms of not just work, but they want to like go clubbing or whatever. And I think they were talking about, oh yeah, we should go clubbing. So for me, that's not something that will bring any extra value to me. I'm not looking to go clubbing with a bunch of 20-year-olds. There's going to be no benefit to that for me, except for just depleting my energy on the weekends that I could use for something else that's more productive, like making videos or something, right? And also, like, I wouldn't go to a club anyway unless I was getting paid to be a bottle girl or something. That's my personal philosophy with clubs, though. It may be different for you, though. Like, let's say maybe you want to get into the entertainment industry, or you want to go to a certain club that you've always been interested in, then okay. And maybe this group of people, they can help get you in for free or get you into a VIP section. If that's valuable to you, if that's an experience that you're seeking out to do, then maybe you say yes, okay? But it just depends. Like, my point is, every time you go to a new event or you engage in a relationship with a new pendulum, we'll put it that way, there's always going to be like offshoots and additional situations or additional, oh my God, what's the word? I can't think of it. Supplementary, my dear Watson. I don't think that's even a quote from Sherlock Holmes. I just made that up. But yeah, there's going to be supplementary events, and like maybe you get invited to another event, right? Maybe you go to an event and you rub shoulders with people and you hit it off with some of them, and maybe one of the hotshots or one of the ones that have actual power, maybe one of the high net worth individuals that you meet at this original event invites you to another event because they like your vibe or they feel like you have things in common. So you can choose to go to that as well to further even expand your circle and your social climbing endeavors. Whew, it's so hot. Okay, let me put on a lip. So I got this from Laka.